All right. Well, before we continue with more frivolity and freewheeling discussion, Brian, we got to catch up on last weekend's biography. We didn't have time on the drive-through. We got to talk about it because it was on Mark Henry and the biography on, as you say, AEW, but it was actually on the A&E network. At least again, this is another guy who they have not beaten to death with the rivals and the biographies and the feuds and the legends and the heels and all the other stuff where you could see some new material for once. And, it was 2 hours where we usually laugh that like Lawler had a 50-year career and got an hour and the Miz got 2 hours, but Mark had more to tell to his story than just getting right into wrestling. So, I didn't think this was padded. But did you get a chance to see the program?
I did, yes.
Well, the only... And of course, Bruce Pritchard was in it as, representative of the office talking head, or in this case, talking chins. But I don't even know if I tell you this story, if I can convey how fucking much of a kick I still get about thinking about this. I was a member of the creative team when Bruce Pritchard told me that they were going to sign Mark Henry and sponsor him for the Olympics. And at the time, the WWF creative team consisted of Vince McMahon and his stooges, me and Bruce Pritchard, and Pat Patterson would stop by usually maybe the week before a pay-per-view, and Jim Ross would drop in because he was booking the house show lineups, and he was foolishly trying to follow the television that Vince would change all the time. And that was it, right? And so I just started there spring of 96 or deep winter. So I was still getting used to the way that things were pitched and the shit that they talked about with straight faces. And Bruce told me, hey, we're going to sponsor this guy in the Olympics, this Olympian. And I had never heard of Mark, and had not met Mark at this time, and I'm not knocking Mark. I'm trying to tell a funny story about Bruce telling me about Mark. But he said, we're going to sponsor him. He's an Olympian. I said, oh, okay. He's a weightlifter. Okay. And he can dunk a basketball, and he weighs 400 pounds. I said, oh, okay. And we're going to, as soon as he gets out of the Olympics, and we're going to, get him in a ring. Okay. And we're going to sign him for 10 years for $250,000 a year. And that's when I said, what? Because in 1996, they weren't giving out guaranteed contracts at all. And in the program, it gets mentioned that, Mark had the first. And I said, what? But you got to pay him for 10 years. It wasn't even the $250,000 a year. It was the 10 years. I'm like, I've never even seen this guy before. What if he's not any good? And Bruce would say, but the thing is, he can dunk a basketball. He would always go back to that. Like that was, I can't convey to you the glee that you would see on Bruce's face when he said those words. It was like, I didn't know you were that big a basketball fan, Bruce. And I said, but the thing is, it's going to get heat with the boys. This is going to get out. If you give a guy that's not even had a lesson yet, a 10-year contract think of the 20-year contract with Brett that was going to go sideways about a year and a half later.
It's like they were competing with Vern, but he already went out of business.
Yes. And I said, what if he's not any good? And I said, but he said, you don't understand. He might go, the NBA might sign him. I said, let the NBA sign him if he wants to play basketball instead of wrestle, because we don't know if he can wrestle.
Yeah, by the way, no mention of the NBA in this biography episode.
Well, no, we saw him dunking a basketball. That much was true, but I don't know if it was in the fucking state finals for the national title or whatever. But that's the thing, is that Vince got the idea, want to sponsor an Olympian. Vern had done it before, but not to that level of financial commitment. I think maybe Patera got $200 a week, maybe.
And you can live in my barn.
Yeah, and the bedroom in the barn. But so they went whole hog with it, and that's what Mark's the first 5 years of his career from 1996 to 2001 really went backwards. And we've talked about it when we've talked about him before that the way that he got into business and unfortunately what happened and what transpired, it took him that 5 years to go back and get his basic training and really understand all the facets of the business, how to think about it, how to do it, how to get along in the locker room. They started him out in a feature match on pay-per-view, and 5 years later, he was in OVW in developmental. And they honestly couldn't tell. They did tell the story of some of his setbacks and, that he was a little full of himself or not knowing how to fit in when he first got into business in the locker room. But they couldn't really tell the full story because it was kind of an indictment on the way that they did him to begin with and why they had to keep revamping him and trying to figure out something new to do with him because of the path they took him on. But anyway, I digress. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Did you, well, you're not old enough to have seen Vasily Alexiev in the Olympics in real time, are you, kid?
No, I don't believe so. Because also, I don't really watch the Olympics. It's not my thing.
Well, see, here's the thing. In 72 and 76, not so much in 68 because I was like fucking 6. But in 72 and 76, I watched the Olympics not only because they were on network television and we only had 3 back then, but also because some of the guys were either dallying with wrestling, had been publicized by the wrestling magazines, boxing because of Ali here, blah, blah, blah. So when I was a kid, the 72 and 76 Olympics were cooking. You saw Chris Taylor, you saw Ken Patera, and it was marketed well by, I think ABC had it both those years, and, it was patriotic. So we watched the Olympics, but Alexiev was a fucking giant beast, and he was the goddamn Russian weightlifter. And he was, the one that Patera and everybody else was, being compared to. But Mark Henry admired him for being because Mark was a big kid, and they talked about how he was so ridiculously big that the other kids picked on him for being ridiculously big. But and as wrestlers, he liked Andre and the big guys, the strong men. And when he was here, he would ask, about old time strong men and, different people in wrestling or just the circus type. He was really, because of his background with Terry Todd, who worked with Paul Anderson when he was the world's strongest man back in the 50s and had all that publicity. And then he got into wrestling. Am I still getting ahead of myself?
No, Thelma Todd. Keep going.
Thelma, no, not Thelma Todd.
I know.
She was the unfortunately murdered actress in the 30s, but she made a great comedy team with Zazu Pitts.
She was great in Monkey Business by the Marx Brothers.
But it was Jan Todd, who was Terry Todd's wife, who was one of the people interviewed for this program, because when Mark got into weightlifting and his high school strength coach to save him from getting in trouble, then he attracted attention of Terry Todd, who was a famous strength and conditioning coach and a weightlifter. And he worked with Mark for a while and trained him for the Olympics, where in 92 he came in 10th. And then, for the next round, Terry Todd had known, as I said, he had worked with Paul Anderson in the past. He knew Vince through Andre the Giant because he had, I think, wasn't that a famous Sports Illustrated piece that Terry Todd wrote on Andre?
Yeah. He wrote it, and those photos are the ones you still see around. Andre holding the beer can, and then Vince Sr., Vince Jr., and Andre like having a good time at wherever, Smith and Walensky's, wherever they were.
Yeah, so anyway, he said, hey, Mark, you could be doing this. And Vince agreed to sponsor him for the Olympics, and he went to Atlanta in 96, tore a rib muscle, still finished the meet, but did not obviously win the gold medal. But, and, you know, they made the point that Mark never did steroids, and again, that is true. You know, he was all natural for, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. He couldn't really go all the way, I don't think, in Olympic weightlifting, probably with being all natural and starting late, and et cetera, et cetera. But nevertheless, there is where the way they debuted him, and he even admitted he had almost no training. Literally, the reason why that they picked Jerry Lawler to work with Mark and that was Mind Games, right, in Philly, September 96. Lawler could work with a guy, and had many times in Memphis a big, strong guy that he could call basic stuff to, and they had obviously had Mark in a ring and showed him somewhat how to hit the ropes and things. But I mean, this was just zero level of training, and they were able to pull it off with Lawler calling it, because Vince insisted on having him off of the Olympics, having him on that show. And again, I was like, yes, I know it'll be acceptable, you know, palatable, whatever, with the King, but then what are we going to do with it? Well, then you know, we're going to have him train in the warehouse. This was before developmental that had become a thing. And, you know, I suppose if you show him on television, then, and put all this, you know, attention on him, and then he goes away for however long, then it's, And then at the same time, if you put him in the ring right now with anybody else but Lawler, it'd be god awful. So, you know, but Vince wanted to do it. So they debuted him against Lawler on that pay-per-view. And then they put him in training at the warehouse. And remember, Brian, how they mentioned that he broke his ankle. But remember how I've said I hated the real ropes on a ring. I like the cables.
Yeah, you've always said that.
Many times. Well, he's 400 fucking pounds. He hits the goddamn real ropes that they're hitting in not just a 2-hour house show every night, but they're using this as a training ring. And the rope breaks, and he gets caught, and his leg goes sideways when he takes the bump, and he breaks his ankle. So by the time that he had his debut on pay-per-view, beats Jerry Lawler, then goes into training, then gets hurt, then recuperates from that, then continues his training. I think we worked it out one time. He had like 2 matches in his first 18 months. So he made $375,000 for 2 matches. And that's why the boys then were like, what the fuck, this fucking guy? Combined with Mark's always a friendly guy, always laughing, always joking, but he came in not realizing what kind of atmosphere he was in, or that these guys would be mad because they've worked for years and years to not get the goddamn guarantee that he got, but walking in from doing something else. And that's where they started, while he was recuperating from his broken ankle. He'd come to TVs on crutches, right? 400 pounds with a broken ankle. So he needs the crutches. If he sat down on like an equipment case or something and leaned his crutches up, some of the boys would get his attention and somebody else would sneak up and steal his crutches and put him out in the middle of the ring, and he'd have to figure out a way to go get them. And they did do the treatment of one of his Subway sandwiches one time, which probably tasted a little shittier than normal Subway sandwiches taste. Because he wasn't doing himself any favors, because he just walked into it and he didn't know what the fuck. So that's why that.
Yeah, but still, they shouldn't have shit in a sandwich.
Well, no, but they were shitting in fucking everybody's sandwich, because that's what they shouldn't have shit in anybody's sandwich. But that's what they were doing when you give them an opening, and it was because the company did not prepare him in any way for the business. That's why Brett took him to Calgary and had him up there for a while, teach him how to act as much as work. And then, when he finally got back, the end of 97, and he joined the Nation of Domination, then he could be around those guys. And he started to learn more of the in-ring with Simmons and, D'Lo already had some experience at that point in time. The Rock was new, but he cut the promos. So he started getting a little background and training there. And then the fucking Jerry Springer acolytes took over and he became sexual chocolate and was having an affair with Mae Young. And I think that's why
he loved it. It seemed like he was happy with it. He came up with the idea, and obviously that's one of the more memorable things of that era was his affair with Mae Young leading to her birth of a hand.
But now he came up with the idea because he and the boys were laughing about himself being attractive to the ladies, and it's another thing that then Vince hears about and can't resist and goes too far with and lets other people go too far.
And that was the band in Coming to America, Sexual Chocolate.
But think about this. At that point, then people started laughing at him. Here you've got this giant, world's strongest man, Olympic weightlifter, blah, blah, blah. And people are laughing at him. And I'm sure he had a lot of fun, but that's why that basically at that point in 2000, they'd run out of things to do with him and they sent him to OVW. He'd gotten too heavy. They wanted him to lose weight. And he still didn't really, he'd skipped over all the basics of how to not only to do wrestling, but think about wrestling. And he just had to learn on the job. So it helped his physical conditioning, but at the same time, it helped him learn more how to think. And he started appreciating the wrestling business better then because he saw what guys were doing to get there that he had completely skipped over with the way that things had happened. And it's the point where one time when we were still in the old building, before we moved into the new place, he bought the boys a new air conditioner for the locker room that they could stick in the wall because it was so fucking hot. And he was the one because he was still making $250,000 a year. And here these guys are, trying to get $300 to $500 a week. But that's when he became more popular with guys, learning not only kind of he was actually a leader at some point at that point because he was more experienced than a lot of them. So he took more responsibility in that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but no mention of OVW at all in the biography.
Well, no, because there's the thing they talked about when he got hazed when he first got into business and then he got hurt, but they couldn't just say, and then we had to send him back to developmental, start from scratch 4 years into this thing. That's why I'm saying it would have been an indictment of the company. How the fuck have y'all botched this guy up that bad? But at that point, two things happened. One, he got down to 390 pounds. It was the lightest he has been in his wrestling career. They wanted us to get him to lose weight, and we did, and he did, and was doing leapfrogs and monkey flips. And then we used him both as a babyface and a heel. He was a heel here, but I liked him as a babyface better because he had the great smile and the kids liked him, and he was a big guy that could be friendly. And he was a name, not only from wrestling, from national television, but also the Olympics for personal appearances, sponsors, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, we used him as both. We said, okay, he's in great shape. He's a joy to work with. Here you go. And the first thing, they got the idea for him to enter the Arnold Classic, and he bulked up again. He gained like 70 pounds back for the fucking Arnold Classic, but he won it. So, but that was that. Now it's 2002, so now they've really decided, okay, we're going to do something fucking with him now. But it took all that long to get him going in the right fucking direction.
This thing did a better job of building up his strongman career than anything they ever did on TV.
Well, yeah, and I didn't know why that, again, everybody had to be a fucking comedy guy in the Springer era. But he was legitimately the strongest man in the world, and he could do shit like that. So we had him doing stuff in OVW, punching the fucking 10-penny nail through the board with his bare hand, and bending things and lifting things, whatever the fuck, because that's what you do with the world's strongest man. But
well, what'd you think of the way Vince was fucking with him? Where they got him a pan they didn't think he'd be able to fold, or they sent him out to the ring and just ended the show. Like, it seems like he was fucked with his entire run, and seemingly from the bottom up to the very top, more than most wrestlers.
Well, Vince fucking with him then, when they were talking about that, was different and way after when they fucked with him. Vince gave him a fucking red carpet at the beginning because he had an element of Tony Khan in him. Vince did, brand new toy.
But that's what I'm saying, though. He was fucked with at the beginning, and he was fucked with years later by the boss of the company.
When he started fucking with him years later, it was Vince's goddamn weird thought process that he wanted him to be pissed off. He didn't want him to be happy Mark. He didn't want him to be blasé Mark. He wanted him to be rah Mark. Because remember, he said they ribbed him and left him standing in the ring, and he came back and got pissed off, and then Vince said, that's what I want. And then there's the Hall of Pain and all that other shit. It's one of Vince's many weird things that he does. He wants to piss people off sometimes.
Well, again, Vince was the one behind apparently giving him a frying pan they didn't think he'd be able to bend, and he struggled with it, and eventually he did it, which shows how strong he was. But why is he fucking with a guy doing something on live TV?
I don't know if that was live. Might have been a pre-tape. That wasn't live when they sent him out stand in the ring.
All right, that's all right.
When they sent him out stand in the ring, that didn't make air. See, that's Vince will fuck with you to get the goddamn emotions.
How would you react if you were standing in the ring waiting for something and then Tony Schimmel just shuts down the show?
I would have actually gone over in the front row, tried to grab some fan's popcorn, and just sat down at the desk and put my feet up and stayed till everybody had left. But anyway, and then basically the retirement promo that even fooled his family. He had his family, his teenage sweetheart. I remember him talking about her 20-something years ago in OVW. They were together then, and his kids, and, that's where Vince had talked him into one more deal, and then he went in the Hall of Fame in 2018. And then I couldn't believe that they mentioned AEW. What'd you think about that?
I think they're trying to tell somewhat of a cohesive story. They mentioned AEW, they didn't mention OVW. So that's interesting. But,
well, no, it's just because they...
the truth is, this would have been a good 90-minute documentary, and they had to stretch it to 2 hours. And after a while, it was just a lot of footage of, him talking to his family.
Coaching kids, too.
Yeah.
He's big on coaching kids. But no,
and that's wonderful, but it was a lot of footage of it.
Again, I understand why they didn't mention OVW at the start, but I was surprised they mentioned AEW, except to answer the question of, well, if he was in the Hall of Fame and everything was so great, where's he been? And basically, Mark said he wanted to teach, but he had to do what was best for his family. Basically meaning I had to take more money, but what is it what are they letting him do or teach or say over there? When's the last time we saw Mark Henry in public on a wrestling program?
Oh, no, I thought and I could be wrong, wasn't he one of the names released or not renewed, whatever it was?
Okay, well then...
Let me double check on that.
Double check on that, please, there, roving reporter last, because we don't want to give... But he was in AEW for a long fucking time, and he didn't do a whole fucking lot. So I'm wondering what they were even letting him do besides cash their check. That was the reason why that he went there to begin with.
Yeah, he announced in May that he has left AEW.
Okay, so 2 months ago. So that by the time that this was all pre-shot and etc., whatever, but apparently they didn't listen to a lot of his lessons. If you don't listen to lessons, Brian, you can be lacking in your learning.
Okay, like Larry Looper?
Well, no, he was the best one of the loopers. I never liked Lou. And truthfully, I wasn't much on his cousin Goober Looper. You remember him?
I don't.
He lived down in the holler.
I don't know anything about him. No.
All right. So that brings up an interesting thing, Brian. Did you have any further comments on the Mark Henry biography in total?
No, it was a very well done piece overall. Very likable, Mark Henry, a guy you want to root for. And yeah, it was a very nice episode of Biography. I don't know what else there is to say.
Well,
no mention of Jim Cornette or OVW. That was my other big takeaway.
Well, again. But the thing is that I think it was good. I think it was fine. But sometimes you want something, Brian, that's just flat out awesome. Just plain awesome. Just when you just delve into it, you just open it up and you go, holy mackerel, the awesomeness is cascading down my body. All over my body with awesomeness. Haven't you ever had that feeling?
Not exactly that, although it is certainly exciting when something awesome arrives at your doorstep.
It's tingling. It gets you in the feels, doesn't it?
I don't know about that either, young man, but...
Well, folks, if you'd like to be felt up by something that comes out of a box in your mailbox...
That's not how I would put it in any way, no.
Well, it makes you feel good. You're up. They say when you're happy, you're up, and when you're sad, you're down. So it's going to make you feel up. So if you'd like to get felt up by something that you can get in your mailbox on a monthly basis, then you go over to boxofawesome.com and you check out the wonders that are contained therein. Because Box of Awesome from our friends at Bespoke Post, ladies and gentlemen, have a new premium lineup of Box of Awesome collections. Cool gear, as the kids say, in every box with Box of Awesome Premium. They're doubling the fresh finds now because they're going out and they're finest. They're curating is what they're doing. These fine handcrafted items from all over the country, all over the world, from a variety of artisans and craftspeople. And well, some of these things may be high quality replicas. Every once in a while, some master forger comes through. But most of the time, it's just mom or pop, and they're making these things. And then Box of Awesome sends them to you at stellar discounts, up to 30% off or more. And, again, that's all the work you have to do. You just answer a couple of questions. What are you into, Brian? Every time you get on there, you talk about how you like to gut people like a fish. You like to cut them from asshole to appetite.
That is not what I say, and that's not what you'll say, and that's not an appropriate thing to type into any website, ladies and gentlemen.
You like to
keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself.
People like Jack in Whitechapel.
What?
But let's say that somebody else, just wants to fillet a fish with that type of knife.
Where's Marvin?
They've got Marvin just got shot in the face. But anyway, at Box of Awesome, if you like culinary delights, you like cooking in the kitchen, you like spices, you like handcrafted crafts things, you like knives, you like all manner of things, well, boy, howdy, they got them. You tell them what you like, they'll send you things that you like, and they won't cost a lot of money, and they'll help small businesses, and they will bring joy to your life, joy to the people in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. Every month in your mailbox, and it's free to sign up. You can skip a month or cancel anytime you want to. And why would you be so rude? And think about these people's feelings. Mom might never recover. She was in the bedroom crying when she heard you canceled. Fucking prick. But anyway, and you can get 15% right now off your first box of awesome when you sign up at boxofawesome.com and enter the code JCE at checkout. Boxofawesome.com, code JCE, 15% off your first box. And again, whether you're like Brian Last and you want to just slash your way across the countryside like some kind of mad science fiction villain, or whether you'd like to have some nice barbecue spice rub to put on your ribs, Box of Awesome. They'll fix what ails you.
Yeah, those two options.
Well, sometimes you might want to combine those things. Now, let's say, you're gonna get into cannibalism. You could slice and dice your way across the countryside, laying waste to innocent sheep herders, and then put the barbecue spice rub on them when you set them on the grill that night.
All right, Box of Awesome. Lots of awesome things. You're not even going to
argue with cannibalism?
I don't know what's going on. Again, you're having an episode where you're having an episode. You're revealing to the audience the true villain is you. I remain the guiding light, and I will tell you that if you want something awesome on your doorstep, or let's say in your mailbox, each and every month, filled with who knows what other than something you will like, Box of Awesome is the place to go, and Jim is the man to tell you how to get there.
Code JCE at boxofawesome.com. Did I ever tell you Jeffrey Dahmer once invited me to a dinner party at his house?
No.
But I got there late, and boy, did I get the cold shoulder.
All right.